Hey, I'm Smooneychad, and this is a series where I've been trying to beat heavily modded Kerbal space program using aircraft only, and this episode is sponsored by War Thunder. Today we have the completely sane goal of diving through a wormhole to a distant solar system and exploring it with an SSTO that carries a helicopter around inside of it, not to mention our ship literally eats asteroids to get there. And speaking of that ship, we're going to pick up where we left off in low Kerbin orbit, where our ship is currently doing a very long burn out to Sarnus. Sarnus is the Saturn analog from the Outer Planets mod for Kerbal space program, and it's quite a ways out into the Kerbal System. Meaning, of course, we have to do a very long burn and several passes of Kerbin before we finally have enough get up and go to get out to Sarnus. And of course, we're going to be using my classic method of using a mid-course correction burn to actually get an encounter with it, an encounter that is literally 6 years away. So after 6 years of copious amounts of table shuffleboard and artificial gravity, the Somerset has finally arrived at Sarnus. Unfortunately, I couldn't get a gravity assist off of any of Sarnus's large moons to get a free capture, so we're just going to be diving well below the ring system here, right above Sarnus's atmosphere, and doing a capture burn there. But of course, this uses extra fuel, meaning that we are definitely going to have to refuel before we go through the wormhole into the other solar system. And to actually do that, we're going to have to find an asteroid to eat, because like I said, this is supposed to eat asteroids, though we've not actually tried it yet. And convenient for us, there's a bunch of asteroids in orbit around Sarnus, though I guess you could call them moonlets. One of the ones that we found is this I-class gargantuan asteroid that we're going to be completely probably consuming to refuel this thing, because it needs a lot of fuel. First up though is a quick slate flyby, and we're going to be storing all of the science data that we get from this in the onboard science labs, which is going to drastically multiply how much we get. After that, it's time to rendezvous with our first victim, which is of course that giant asteroid, at least supposedly giant asteroid. We're going to be getting an intersect with it here, and pretty soon we can already see the flare in the distance, and the name of the asteroid is MER737. So we're going to do a quick rendezvous burn to actually match our speed with the asteroid, and hopefully get a nice and easy rendezvous with it. If you see that little dot in the distance moving as we do our burn, that's thanks to the Distant Object Enhancer mod, which is one of the mods in this playthrough that makes little space stations or asteroids like this visible from very far away. And once we got to the physics range of about 2.2 kilometers, the asteroid magically pops into existence. And from here, we're going to be using our RCS thrusters on board to gradually approach the asteroid very slowly and grab it with the claw that's at the front of this ship. And once we have it secure, we're going to go ahead and deploy all of our mining stuff. And this is equipped with a full ISRU unit, a drill, and some radiators, of course, to keep everything cool. And as expected, the refueling does work. It just takes an annoyingly long time, because you have to keep switching back and forth between time warp speeds to actually keep it from stopping while keeping it at the fastest speed possible. And I was so ready for it to be over, I actually let go of the asteroid before we refilled the monopropellant, which is pretty bad, so I immediately reattached to the asteroid and began taking a bit more ore out of it. And I think reattaching this and drilling it again kind of pissed the asteroid off, because the second that we let go of it, it tried to attack us. Luckily, we had drained so much of its mass, the attack didn't really do much. So we were able to just back away anyway and get out of here with a full tank of liquid fuel and 9,000 meters per second of Delta V. So we're completely ready for the mission of the wormhole, but first we're going to actually try out the artificial gravity. We're going to do this by holding prograde and rotating the station. One thing I didn't intend to happen, though, was this. This very famous video is showing the Zhenebekov effect, aka tennis racket theorem, which basically just means that any object roughly shaped like this T-handle is going to flip back and forth like it is. And it just so happens that our ship is exactly shaped like that T-handle, yeah, it's going to go back and forth like that, because KSP does actually model this effect whenever you rotate objects. So I didn't really account for that. I completely forgot that that was a thing while designing this to be an artificial gravity station. So as you can see, the flip started right here and it started going over. I did stop it before that got too far gone, so it's been a little bit working on a way to actually fix this, and luckily the overpowered reaction wheels in KSP allowed me to keep SAS on and just disable the roll axis, so it kept it rolling and just corrected for any kind of flip that was about to happen, and kept us nice and stable so we could do a demo of the artificial gravity. And it turns out it actually works. The free IVA mod models centrifugal forces, inertial forces, whatever you want to call it, so you can actually recreate artificial gravity if you have a spinning space station that you can go into free IVA on and walk around. And you can see we actually fell at a pretty fair pace there, which makes me think that we were under a good bit of gravity here at the end of the station, where the artificial gravity effect is the strongest but I have no clue how to actually measure that. I'm sure there's some way that I could measure the distance and the rotational speed and come up with a number of what G the Kerbals are experiencing there, but I have no way to actually know that right off the bat with just a number in a menu or anything. So we don't actually have a number on that, but I think it's a good bit to keep them from turning into jello on the journey. Here we're at the last module of the arm, the one closest to the center where the gravity effect is the weakest, and you can see we're a lot slower here. The station rotation is probably also slowing down a good bit here. And here we're going to be going through some adapters and going through the center of the station, because there is a whole tube, and you can see the fuel tank right there, that goes through the center of the station and through the fuel tank. And this allows us to actually pass between the two arms, because I thought that'd be a really cool thing till you could just walk between the two arms in free IVA, and the Kerbals could go right through. Here's the last bit of the tube and adapters, and then we're in the opposite compartment that we were just in. And you can see the gravity is now pulling us the opposite direction to this arm. So it actually works all the way through, and occasionally you can see some things rotating in the distance. It's very cool to see that going by. I imagine that would be pretty nauseating if you were in there, along with the your inner ear messing up from all the rotation. And just like that, we're on the opposite science module, and here's some of the opposite arm crew that I imagine we haven't seen in a good bit, because it does take a bit to get from one arm of the station to the other. I'll probably keep messing up and accidentally calling this a station because, well, it just seems like a space station because that's what I'm used to, having all these modules and stuff together, but this is absolutely a very mobile ship. This probably goes more distance than any other ship that I've ever made in KSP. I mean, after all, it's designed to explore an entire solar system for the most part. Here we're getting a rough encounter with the wormhole, and I'm not really worried about being too awfully efficient with it, because we do have a lot of Delta V to spare for the time being at least. Here we're making our final approach on the wormhole, and I actually did go into orbit around it first off camera, because if you actually fly into this too fast, you'll shoot out the other side, at least from my experience, and yeah, there's no way of recovering from it. So you want a nice gentle descent down to the teleportation altitude, where it just teleports you over to the other system. And though passing through the wormhole may be fairly easy, it's no trivial task. Once you pass that point right there where it froze and loaded the other system, there is no communicating with Kerbin after that point. Because even with modded antennas, there is no way to reach a signal back there. I've tried. This is where on the other side we see the mod's namesake, Kcalbeloh, as well as Sarah, the planet that we're orbiting, and its moon, Dapuk. Sarah is the host, of course, of the wormhole, the other end of the wormhole, and it's a planet in the Sunorc system, which is one of 3 systems around the black hole Kcalbeloh. Sarah is a large planet, a little bit bigger than Kerbin, with liquid oceans on the surface and an atmosphere about 40% thicker. Sarah is the 3rd planet out in the Sunorc system, and like I said before, it is the host of the wormhole we use to get to the Kcalbeloh system as a whole. So it's very important that we know what we're dealing with here with this planet, because we're going to be seeing it a lot. So we're going to go ahead and try to refuel our vessel yet again. It's not completely out of fuel, but it would be nice to top it off. Luckily for us, Sarah has a whole bunch of asteroid moonlets that orbit in its ring system. So I looked through and found one of the larger ones, and we're going to actually rendezvous with it. And it's actually really cool because you can see a lot of the moonlets flying by in the distance. This is the one we're actually meeting up with, but I saw several other ones fly by while we were rendezvousing with it. And speaking of which, what's that?
It's War Thunder, the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made. And I mean it. What other game lets you do this? And you too can do awesome stuff like that right now for free on PC, consoles, and even an all-new mobile version that lets you take the battle with you. And it's not just even modern fighter jets you can take command of. There's over 2,500 tanks, ships, helicopters, and of course planes from 10 different nations, ranging from biplanes and armor cars of the 1920s to modern jets and main battle tanks of today. And all of this runs on a game engine so optimized that even my ultra-low-end laptop, held together by wishful thinking and superglue, can run it with high frame rates and impressive visuals, allowing pretty much anyone to immerse themselves in insane combat, super detailed vehicles, realistic graphics, authentic sound effects, and the most powerful war machines of all time. One thing I love about the game is the sheer amount of variety and individual variants of vehicles that they have. They have so many, it's actually insane. Not to mention that War Thunder is a truly massive game with over 70 million players across the world that you can join the ranks of, and hours upon hours of endless content. There's simply no game out there that can top War Thunder if you love military aircraft and vehicles. And if you use my links in the description and the pinned comment and sign sign up on PC or console, for a limited time you'll get a massive bonus pack. It's available for new and returning players who haven't played in at least 6 months. It includes an exclusive Eagle of Valor vehicle decorator, 7 days of premium account, 100 silver lines, and more. So show War Thunder some love for supporting the channel, and use my links to sign up for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and mobile. It's all free and helps support the channel. As we approach the asteroid that we're docking up with, you may notice that the rings are kind of getting smeared and weird looking. You may notice that a lot in the early parts of this video, and it was a setting that I was struggling with on my old laptop with the visuals getting all muddled and weird. It was some kind of anti-aliasing bug. But you can see that we're meeting up with the asteroid now, and since everything is named backwards here, I figured we would name this moonlet Telnoom, because we will be hanging around it for a good while, and I thought it'd be neat to have our own named moon around Sarah. We're going to be doing a bunch of sides around Sarah, obviously, and we're going to be trying to just keep all of that and eventually transfer into data. We also had this quick mission, but like I said in the last episode, it didn't actually end up working out. We released the probe for it, but it actually didn't have enough Delta V to get out to its designated orbit, so we just basically ditched it. And now it's time to undock our SSTO, because we're not just going to be hanging around in orbit of Sarah, we're going to be landing there. And a bit of a tall order for a planet that I've never even tested anything on before. Now it's going to be fairly similar to entering on Kerbin, but the atmosphere is a little bit thicker and the actual orbital velocity is a bit faster. That added up with the fact that we were coming from a fairly high orbit around Sarah and re-entering from that makes for a very long re-entry and a very hot one. So we came in at a very, very steep angle to try to bleed off as much speed as possible. And the Godwit SSTO that we're using here does very steep re-entry angles very, very well. Probably better than any other SSTO that I've had. And it maintains a really stable re-entry with it. Now, as you can tell, this has been a very spicy re-entry, so I'm glad it takes a good bit of heat too. So we're going to go ahead and, as we transition into more so high-end flying speeds for the Godwit, we're going to go ahead and tilt it down into more so a flying position, because we're going to want to actually kind of fly to where we want to land, of course, and we need to pick out a landing spot too. Luckily, if we miss everything, we also have plenty of fuel on board, because we have infinite fuel as long as we're in an atmosphere. As far as the landing position goes, we're going to be trying to shoot for somewhere near this lake here, because it looks very interesting, and I'm very curious what liquid that's actually made out of, because this is such a weird world. It doesn't seem like that should be water, but I think it may actually be. As we're flying high up on Sarah here, we actually see something like a very wispy hurricane forming up above. It's very, very pretty. And those rings in the background just add a whole nother layer of cool to everything. And once we slowed down enough, I actually activated the nuclear engine there, which of course, once it's in an atmosphere, has infinite fuel, like I said. So yeah, it's very, very handy for finding a good landing location, which are few and far between on a planet like this, especially given that we have parallax installed with terrain scatters on, meaning that every rock and everything that you see here on the surface has a collider. We can hit it. And as it turns out, Sarah with parallax on has some of the most wicked terrain scatters that I've probably ever seen. They're literally just giant spokes sticking up out of the ground, which I imagine wouldn't be very good for your SSTO if you landed it into one. So we're going to have to try to dodge those while landing. My first idea was to come in as slow as possible so we can stop as fast as possible, but the high angle of attack that you need to stay in the air, going that slow, caused us to lose our elevators / brakes back there. So in the second attempt, I decided to come in with plenty of speed and get as low to the ground as possible. And as soon as I found a good spot, just try to set it down on the ground and bleed all the speed away. So I was keeping a good bit of speed so we could actually maneuver around all the spokes. And this is probably the most sketchy SSTO landing sequence that I've ever done. We're just feet above the ground, dodging spokes left and right, and if we hit one of them, we're dead. So it's a very, very sketchy thing, and every time I thought there was a good strip like right here, spokes would appear in front of us, so I'd have to dodge those again. And yeah, this one I came extremely close to hitting. I thought for sure we were going to take the landing gear out on that one. But finally here, right afterward, I think I found a pretty good spot, so I start trying to bleed speed up as much as possible and come in for a soft landing on the ground. And that we did. We came in for a nice buttery landing on these gravelly rocks here, and then kind of had to pick back up off the ground because the atmosphere here is very thick and we had a good bit of speed. Like I said, it's about 40% thicker than Kerbin atmosphere, but about the same gravity.
so we ended up flying at a lot lower speed than we would on Kerbin. But either way, we ended up bringing it down safely to the surface, and we're going to immediately open up the cargo bay and start doing some of that sweet scientific data here on the surface, and read a little bit about Sarah. Seems like it's a very hostile place, and it has absolutely no life. At least here on the land, it's not looking good for life on Sarah. Here's us looking out of the windows from the inside, a very desolate, Mars-like, maybe like Dune-like place. But naturally, Jebediah Kerman has absolutely no problem hopping out here and planting a flag to claim this in the name of aircraft only. And he took a quick surface sample, and the surface sample basically tells the same story. The surface is full of heavy minerals, but it's actually a good thing if you want to mine different metals and ores out of the surface, I imagine. So it's looking good for us refueling here on the surface. And of course, inside is the true star of the show, our helicopter that we tested out in the last video, which, because I'm lazy, still has absolutely no automatic deployment, so we're still just manually deploying this thing, and we have to unlock everything as we go because it's tied down for obvious reasons that this is an SSTO, and we don't want that thing shaking around back there. So we retract the dingus after it drops off the helicopter there, and we're going to go ahead and deploy the wheels on our helicopter and roll it out to a safe place to deploy the blades and everything. With this being the first time that we're actually deploying the helicopter truly in the field, there's some hiccups of course, but luckily we have Fergus and Grell Kerman at the helm here who are going to be piloting our helicopter for this journey. And like I said, everything's like still locked down from the whole journey there, so we have to unlock everything to actually deploy it, and then relock everything back up to make sure that it flies properly. And actually accidentally left the game going here for so long that our SSTO became sentient and turned around to watch the helicopter launch. After containing the SSTO anomaly, we got back to launching this helicopter for the first time on another planet. Like I said, I've never tested this out in the atmosphere here on Sarah, but I imagine with it being thicker and the same gravity more or less than Kerbin, it can take off, and it sure did. Not without a learning curve though, with the atmosphere being a little bit different and time between me actually testing this helicopter and deploying it, I kind of forgot how to fly it too. And if you're wondering why it has RCS on board, that's so we can undock it in space and then redock it back up to whatever we need to. After a big wobbly battle with this helicopter and a battle with the helicopter-hating atmospheric autopilot mod, something clicked and I just eventually got good control of the helicopter finally. Enough control for me to comfortably go on the trip that we need to go on, because we parked this at the nearest place that we could find a flat spot and not exactly near the lake. So we need to travel all the way down to the lake to test the waters and everything, and then all the way back. We're going to be seeing all the biomes along the way and capturing as much science data as we possibly can. The only problem is this is about like I think a 26-kilometer journey, and this helicopter is very, very slow. So this is going to take some time and effort, because helicopters aren't just a set and fly kind of autopilot thing. They need constant upkeep. You can see it's twisting to one side or the other, and you basically have to constantly input something to make minor corrections and keep this thing in the air. At first we were making really good time, but for some reason things just really started slowing down because I decided to climb to a bit of a higher altitude to actually see the lake. I didn't really realize how slow I actually made it doing this. So yeah, we took a lot of time off the trip. I think the round trip ended up being something like an hour altogether because of this. But we descended back down and reached the highest speed I'll probably ever reach in this helicopter. That was like 70 meters per second or something like that. But eventually got back to our cruising speed of around 50 meters per second out toward the lake. And here's a cool flyby shot that I got. And as you can see, at around 30-40 meters per second, it flies incredibly stable with very little input. I was just trying to fly as fast as possible, and that's the reason it was extra unstable. So we finally made it to the shores of the lake here, and yeah, it certainly looks like water. Very dingy, swampy, nasty water, but it looks like water nonetheless. So we're going to be turning around here and landing on the shore first, so we don't, completely poison everyone before we go down to the water, and hopefully plant a nice little flag. Landing on this is pretty darn simple, and as you can see at this point, after flying it for like an hour, I had mastered control of the helicopter. So I slowly lowered the angle of attack on the rotors and brought it down very, very slow onto the shore here, right about where the waves were breaking at, and we're going to bring out Fergus and have him plant a flag. And of course, get plenty of science while he's out there, because we are grabbing a bunch of science. Even if it's not on camera, I'm grabbing science at every possible step of the way during this mission, and we're collecting it all together to the massive mothership of science up there, where it's all going to be processed later on once this whole mission is complete, because this is just the first planet we're landing on, remember that. Now we're going to go out here and take a little dip. We're going to be going on a whole little water journey, and seeing how well this thing floats on, well, what I think is water at least. And we're about to need a confirmation on that really quick. Accidentally kind of dipped us a little bit too far down into the water there. But we're going to just hover just above the water line so Fergus isn't completely poisoned. And go ahead and get him out to test everything out. And drum roll, please. It's water. It's just very, very nasty water full of lead and toxic chemicals and everything, with absolutely no life present in it. This planet is completely sterilized. It's there's no life anywhere. I actually kind of like it. It's kind of cool. A completely desolate place, but not completely unlike home. It has no oxygen in the atmosphere. That's one problem. But now we're going to start off our journey back to the SSTO, and as you can see, I am booking it back there. And this took quite a while to get back to the SSTO, just as long as the other time, but this time, I just wanted to get back to the SSTO and continue on with the rest of the mission. This footage here is sped up by about 100 times, and this footage is the actual speed I was playing in. It's actually slower than real time because my laptop really struggles running KSP with all these mods. Luckily, my fiance Brookie stepped in and said,
"Let me drive the boat."
Which at first definitely had some disastrous results, but after a quick few lessons with my flight stick, she eventually actually got the hang of it. Much quicker than I actually got the hang of it. I mean, I was complaining that I forgot how to fly this helicopter between missions. She never flew anything, especially not with a flight stick before, and immediately picked it up and flew all the way back to the SSTO. Once we actually got there, though, I took over to actually land the thing just because of the more nuanced controls with everything. At least that's what I tell myself to get sleep at night. So let me know if we should have Brookie take over for some flight missions in the future, and maybe I can use it as an excuse to take some more of the boring flights off of me. As we approach the SSTO here, I almost forgot to retract the rotors before we go up under there, because this thing barely fits. That definitely would have been good if I would have just rolled right under there with the rotors and everything down. Once we had everything retracted, I tried my best to line everything up with the dingus, which is the official name of the grabbing arm that we're using. And this is actually the first redocking of the helicopter to the SSTO. We've never actually tested that in the field, and for some reason I left it down there without retracting it back into the cargo bay and immediately started the refueling process so we can meet back up with the Somerset up in orbit. And things got a little bit wobbly, unfortunately, as we were coming out of time warp, and we busted all of the tires. Yeah, all the tires are completely broken, meaning this thing cannot rove around at all. And Fergus did a quick inspection to make sure, and yeah, it was pretty hopeless. And our only hope now is that the Somerset has enough repair kits on board and all of that cargo stuff that I packed into it, because I packed a bunch of extra cargo stuff. So I'm really hoping we have enough repair kits on board to actually repair that. Otherwise, our helicopter will be out of commission for any future planets in this system. So that might be pretty bad. But anyway, since we didn't have a quick save to go back to, like I said, we're just going to go ahead and start our ascent. And it's a little bit easier than the landing since I can kind of steer back and forth and dodge the spikes. And we got off the ground very quickly. You can see we have our navigational lights on because, of course, we need those on a planet in a distant solar system that no one's ever visited before. I used the rocket mode on the nuclear engine there, the wet mode, whatever you want to call it, to get us up to a good speed, and then put it back into the infinite fuel air intake mode. Now we actually have to line our orbit up with this line up here, which is the orbital plane that the MOVE Somerset is orbiting at with its asteroid that it docked up to. So we need to get that kind of lined up and then start our ascent from there. So it required a bit of traveling and then a big turn. Now you can see we're very much lined up with it, and it's time to start the main ascent up to orbit, which is going to take a bit. Like I said, the orbital velocity is a bit more, and we're actually going to use as much of the atmosphere as we possibly can to gain speed before we activate the closed cycle mode on the nuclear engines that actually takes fuel. You can see we raised our apoapsis up to the point it needed to be while we were still in the atmosphere, so We were blazing through the upper atmosphere there and actually got a sonic boom somehow in that flyby. But getting a rendezvous with the Somerset should be very, very easy now. The Somerset and Telnum, I should say, since we named that little asteroid we docked to. And man, this was a beautiful rendezvous. Underneath the ring system of Sarah, with this giant ship attached to an asteroid. It was absolutely beautiful. It was even pretty inside the docking port camera. In fact, I actually like the view here of the docking port camera probably a bit more, especially since I actually nailed the docking with it pretty much first try here. And as soon as it's docked to the Somerset, it becomes the propulsion module and an extra fuel tank. So now we're going to be refueling from the asteroid and hopefully topping all the fuel tanks completely off. But like I said, it takes a long time to refuel from asteroids because I made a mistake in the size of the ore container. We did completely drain this asteroid though of everything. So with almost full fuel tanks, we went ahead and let Telnum go. And as soon as it hit the physics range of about 2.2 kilometers, it promptly disappeared. But of course, we can't forget about all of those wheels that we popped on the surface, and we need to figure out whether or not we have enough repair kits on board. So we got Bill Kerman out, our station engineer here, and we have literally just enough repair kits packed on board to actually repair all those wheels. So he's going to quickly grab all of those and run all the way back to the helicopter here and repair all the wheels. We need to be extra careful from here out, though, because we don't have any more repair kits to pretend like we're a mechanic with. So, yeah, that might be a bit of an issue if we're a little bit, risky with the quick save. So from here out, I'll probably quick save like every 30 seconds to make sure that didn't happen. So we went ahead and made a new maneuver to go to the next planet in this solar system, Seleuco, because we aren't moon hopping. We are hopping from planet to planet here. So massive amounts of Delta V is being spent. And yeah, I'm still doing mid-course correction burns, and very large ones at that, which had me a bit worried because Seleuco doesn't actually have any of the asteroids that we normally fuel off of. It does have one asteroid, though, that's a whopping 3.3 kilometers, and actually has its own gravity, much like Gilly. Seleuco, on the other hand, is an eyeball planet tidally locked to its star, and can possibly host life. And I'll tell you this, it's definitely one of the most beautiful places that I've ever actually been to in Kerbal Space Program, with stunning clouds and a permanent day and night side with a ring of habitable zone around it. Ta, on the other hand, might actually be more than what our asteroid-eating ship can handle. But that's going to have to wait until the next episode, because that's all the time we have left today. But stick around for a special message at the end.
Big thanks again to War Thunder for sponsoring this video, and make sure to sign up for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and mobile using my links in the description and pinned comment. And if you're new or haven't played in at least 6 months on PC and consoles, for a limited time you'll get a massive bonus pack with premium vehicles, in-game currency, and more. So after the last episode, I think we all expected that I would be right back on the uploading schedule pretty soon, maybe a bi-weekly video for a while until I got back into it. But a few things happened. First of all, I was planning for Thanksgiving and everything, and that took up a lot of time, and we had some time with family during Thanksgiving. And then I got incredibly sick for 2 weeks, over 2 weeks really. And at first it was a sore throat and I couldn't record any of the overdub for this video, and then it turned into a lingering cough that still somewhat hanging on to me. So it was a really nasty bug, still have no clue what it was, but that hung on for quite a while, and now I'm preparing for Christmas and spending more time with family now. So it's been pretty busy, but something good has happened. Incredibly good news, in fact. I finally have a brand new PC setup with a 9800 X3D processor and a 4070 Super graphics card, meaning that I can run KSP, especially these missions like Aircraft Only, completely smoothly in hundreds of FPS rather than ones of FPS. And if I'm lucky, maybe like 15. Because like I said, I'm running this on a laptop currently, and I have been for like 2 years now that the channel's been going. So it's been very, very difficult because everything is running in less than real time, and that means that the recordings actually physically take longer and take up more storage on my computer, which I have a lot more storage now as well. So just going to make everything a lot more easy with videos, and I'm just very, very grateful for all of it. So just a quick heads up, the rest of this little mini-series within a series, the Kcalbeloh mission here, is going to be recorded on my laptop because all of that is already recorded and I'm just editing it right now.
But everything past that, any new videos after that, are going to be recorded on the brand new computer, and I think everyone's going to be able to quickly tell a difference because everything's not sped up by at least 3 times. So thank you for sticking around during this huge hiatus between episodes, and I thank you guys so much for always tuning back in and watching these. As for right now, this is Smooneychad, out.